Chaos. Pure, malignant, tumultuous mayhem. It is the way of things in the Fated Place, a world which sits among a greater web of planets and realms without number. It is a planet of mortals, monsters and gods, set within a universe of unknown reaches. This is the tale of that place's end, a crescendo of war, disease, sorcery, and hedonism. Welcome to the first episode in our series on the end times of the Warhammer fantasy universe. The people of the Warhammer world probably wanted nothing more than to get away from it all, and we can take the luxury of actually doing so, especially with help from our sponsor, Babbel. Break through any language barriers on your trips this summer by using Babbel, a language learning app that specializes in real-world applications, such as all the stuff you need to enjoy travel. It's got short 10-minute lessons designed by real language teachers, no algorithms or AI, and they can be taken in many forms: online lessons, videos, podcasts or games.
Hallo, ich bin Freddy.
Hallo, ich bin Devin. Want to go see the places the Empire of Man is based on? Try learning a little German. Besuchen Sie das wahre Imperium in Deutschland. It all hits different if you go check out these historic locations that have inspired so many for yourself, and having a few of the genuine words on hand makes it all the better. Fortunately, Babbel is scientifically proven to get you up to speed in a new language in only 3 weeks. And if it looks like it's not going to happen for you, they offer a 20-day money-back guarantee. Even better, use our link in the description to get a 65% discount off of a Babbel subscription, and get ready for your adventures right now. Before chaos or order on this planet, there was nothing. An untouched primal world, ready to be reaped of her blessings. There, the Old Ones came and created the Slann and Saurus to defend and protect the planet in the name of their great plan. Then came the younger races of elves, men, dwarves and orcs. Before long, minor battles erupted between them over differing religions, culture, and monopoly over resources. Yet the worst was yet to come. In their grand design, the Old Ones linked each planet that had caught their eye with great polar gates, connecting their astral empire together like a massive web. These gates could be small to allow individual travel, or large enough to allow massive celestial objects like moons to freely pass through. Their creation was divine, yet this world was not as well as it had seemed. Unknowingly, the polar gates served as a first step for a strange and sickening realm to trespass into this young planet. The gates unintentionally served as a looking glass into the Aether, or the realm of chaos, an indecipherable place of pure magic and home of gods and demons. There, the conventional laws of reality were not set in stone. Even a mortal mind that attempted to grasp the senseless disorder of the realm would go mad. All things of reason, of space, of cause and effect are variable and at the will of none but the Chaos Gods, who give their dimension form through the fears, wants, thoughts and feelings of mortals. Here reign the four most infamous and chiefest gods: Khorne, Tzeentch, Slaanesh and Nurgle. Khorne is Chaos God of rage, violence and murder. He embodies mortal desires of vengeance, conquest and pure nauseating rage. The lesser demons Khorne commands are the pinnacle of savage courage and berserking bloodlust. For their obedience and worship, Khorne gives his followers great individual power in combat. Among the four, Khorne is the mightiest of all Chaos Gods, for every act of murder, violence and killing grants him power, whether it was done by his followers or not. Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it does. Tzeentch is the name of the Chaos God of manipulation, change and sorcery. He bears a near-endless list of titles, with the greatest being the Changer of Ways, Master of Fortune, the Great Conspirator and the Architect of Fate. His domain is married with magic, dynamic mutation and grand scheming. He embodies mortal ambition, desire for truths, and aspirations of change. From the Chaos realm, He hears the dreams and hopes of mortals, and diligently watches their plans take form. Yet he is not content to only observe, and will interfere with fate to bring about his own incredibly complex plans and schemes. History, destiny, intrigue, and all plots are of Tzeentch's greatest interests, with an even greater desire to warp them into his own. Slaanesh is the name of the Chaos God of passion, pleasure, and decadence. Even when he's referred to as the Prince of Excess, Slaanesh can assume any form, be it male, female, hermaphrodite, or entirely sexless. When gazed upon by mortal eyes, Slaanesh takes up the form they'll find most attractive. Mortal lust, self-indulgence, and pride are the domains of Slaanesh. Khorne considers Slaanesh his great rival, for he considers the Dark Prince his opposite in nearly every facet. Nurgle is the name of the Chaos God of rot, death, and destruction. Known as the Fly Lord, the Great Corrupter, Master of Pestilence, and Lord of Decay, he represents mortal morbidity, illness, physical corruption, and their intense desire to achieve immortality and freedom from pain. Nurgle prefers the form of a fat, pox-infested creature, with antlers and a grotesquely massive body. Ironically, Nurgle is thought of as the friendliest Chaos God, for he is the only one to harbour care for his followers. The Lord of Decay is jolly, happy, and kind in his mannerisms, and considers himself the opposite of Tzeentch. Tragically, the polar gates collapsed in the very early history of the planet. The dangerous Chaos Realm was allowed to pour in like a flood following a broken dam. This event, known as the Great Catastrophe, ripped a tear in reality and brought forth demonic hordes, determined to run amok in the pristine world, seeding horror, imbalance, and dark pleasures. In desperation, the mortal armies fought to save their forever cursed world. Their hope resided in one incredibly dangerous spell, the creation of the Vortex. The elves managed to form an ever-spinning maelstrom of raw power that absorbed the excess magic that had poured through the broken gates, and banished the demons of chaos from their beloved realm. And then, for some time, chaos was kept at bay. Millennia passed, and while the Vortex was effective in its design, it was not perfect. The winds of magic still blew freely throughout the realm, gifting mortals with fantastical feats and corrupting others. The forces of chaos waxed and waned in power for centuries, biding their time and chewing at the bit for that fateful day when they would overrun the world again. The pinnacle of Chaos's power rested in the selection of an Everchosen, the highest position attainable within the ranks of the mortal champions of Chaos. The Everchosen were those men who had won the blessings of all Chaos gods, and united the tribes of barbaric mortals who lived in the shadows of the fallen warp gates and the realm of Chaos itself. As the Everchosen, these infamous generals were those in which the Chaos gods united wholly. Even the very earth under the feet of the Everchosen sundered and split. Nature revolted in agony at the presence of dreadful apocalypse incarnate. 12 Everchosen had arisen since the Great Catastrophe. Each time they entered the realm to herald doom, the mortal powers of the realm were successful in driving them back to the northern Chaos wastes. The chiefest and greatest tale is the valiant defeat of the first Everchosen, Morkar the Uniter by Sigmar Heldenhammer, through a great battle of single combat. Yet the grand tale of triumph over evil would eventually begin to fade into a forgotten hope during the end times, for the 13th was anointed. His mortal name, Diedrich Kastner, was cast aside as the faith of the Chaos gods was placed on his shoulders. Archaon the Everchosen, the three-eyed king, would command the last and greatest Chaos invasion, leading to the true end of this accursed realm. The rise of Archaon's power is just as grand of a tale as his actions following the beginning of the end times. Truly the herald of the apocalypse, he succeeded in fulfilling 6 impossible trials, and claimed the 6 treasures of chaos as his prizes. This marked him as a true Everchosen, and gifted him with demonic blessings and power overflowing. These treasures included the armor of Morkar, the first Everchosen, which enabled the wearer to be invulnerable to all but the most ferocious and powerful of attacks. The Eye of Shirian, granting the bearer prophetic visions and the ability to predict and avoid attacks from their enemy. The Steed of the Apocalypse, a great beast stolen from a demon prince within the realm of chaos, tracking ruin and fire beneath the thunder of his feet. The Slayer of Kings, weapon of the second Everchosen and bestower of murderous power. And finally the Crown of Domination, which struck fear and terror into those that lay eyes upon its hellish splendor. The eternally burning Mark of Chaos, which Archaon bore upon his head, combined all the blessings of the Chaos Gods and signified their unified confirmation of the Everchosen. With these treasures under his command, the demon prince Belakor performed a shadowy coronation that snuffed out the last remnant of Archaon's humanity. Finally accepting the gods of chaos to be the true rulers of the cosmos, he set off to begin his tramp of doom across the realm. In the land of mist, the danger is closer still. Pride has ever been the folly of that shrouded land, and so it will be again. When the dragons fly as one, an ancient lie will at last be exposed, a revelation that will shake Ulthuan to the roots of its mountains. The mirror of light and dark will shatter, and Anarian's heirs will fight for the legacy of Cain amidst the ashes of the Phoenix. Prophecy of the End Times. 2519 IC, the cursed year of the beginning of the apocalypse. The twin-tailed comet, often thought of as an omen, tore through the heavens and stole the gaze of all mortals, signifying the start of horrors to come. Within the realm of chaos, the Court of Covenants were graced with the presence of the gods themselves. Agreeing to unite their foul powers under the banner of the Everchosen, the northern wastes stirred with immense power. A great wind of foul magic swept through the land, tearing minor rifts in reality. From each tear poured a host of demons, seeding destruction throughout the world. In the north, the tribes of Norscan men turned their attention to this new and promising Everchosen. Upon his throne of brass and bone did Archaon accept the allegiance of those bloodlust-driven tribes. Some tribes ventured south to quench their thirst for war, but for all of Archaon's power, he was also patient. He did not intervene in these delays, for he knew that those worthy of following him would come, and those that were not would face the wrath of the hungering gods behind him. Drenard Johansson was one such chieftain of the Norscan tribes that refused to bend the knee to Archaon. He had seen the horror that the promise of power from these foul gods had caused, for he had slain his demon-possessed father and claimed the legendary Axe of Icefang, symbol of his people. He was determined to bring honor to the death of his father and set forth to defend the coming advances from the north. There he made his stand upon the slopes of Icefang and fought a bloody battle. The forces of chaos rallying to meet Drenard and the Icefang tribe on the battlefield followed the banner of the demon prince Castragar, who was a bloody champion devoted to Khorne, and in his mortal life he succeeded in annihilating every single goblin within Nashrak's lair. With this great offering of suffering and murder to Khorne, he blessed him as a demon prince, and Castragar travelled back to the Chaos Realm to prepare for his ultimate servitude. Bearing the great axe, Drenard made his stand and slaughtered Khorne's legions by the hundreds. He defended his pride, his people, and the honor of his fallen father for hours. But eventually, the general of the minor Khorne force emerged. Demon Prince Castragar and Drenard met upon the slopes of Icefang, while the rest of Norsca observed. Would this young chieftain herald yet another defiant resistance against the end of the very world? After much time in single combat, the Demon Prince Castragar took his trophy that the Blood God had demanded. The valiant Drenard fell to the Demon Prince, and so too did the remaining Norscan resistance melt. The tribes of Acelings, Vargs, Siles and Basinlings were mobilized by the emerging Chaos champions. Those who still refused, such as the King of Giants Styrmir Rhymefrost, were assassinated by relatives of previous leaders. As if that were not enough to strike fear into the remaining chieftains, the forces of Chaos turned their eye to the Nordic dwarves that also occupied the land. Kraka Drak, meaning Dragonhold in the tongue of dwarfs, was the city of the last great King Silverbeard, and served as the location for the first siege of the End Times. Led by Valkyr the Bloody, demon princess of Khorne, and once Grand Warrior Queen of the Norscan clan Schwarzwolf, the siege would see an important assault of the Nordic dwarves of the far north. This was the first true test of the might of the united forces of Chaos. Demon Princess Valkyr saw bolstering numbers from the remaining Jotuns of Norsca joining her violent and horrible crusade against the dwarves of Kraka Drak. While the dwarves were notoriously famous for both their heritage in defending against Chaos and blessed with arguably the most stalwart tactics in war, Kraka Drak was severely outnumbered and under-supported. With no hope for reinforcements nor replenishment of supplies, the dwarves bolstered what defences they could and prepared for the onslaught. The initial assault of the forces of Chaos led by Valkyr were of no surprise to the dwarves, but what was alarming was the sheer support of the Norscan Jotuns at her back. The legion was unstoppable against the stone walls of the dwarfs. Like a red, thirsting tide did the legions crash against the battlements of Kraka Drak, every assault draining the dwarves of resources and morale. Each attack reminded the mountain men that their hold held no reserve of forces, food or spirit that could turn the tides of the siege. They remained at the walls of Kraka Drak, defending her splendor for weeks, until she eventually ran out of resources and her bearded warriors began to fall at an incredible pace. With no tactical means of retreat and recuperation, a deadly decision had to be made. The once rich and bustling Dragonhold had been totally ravaged in the name of the god of war. In the wake of destruction and thousands of dead kin, the few survivors dove underground in a retreat to the ancient caves of their forefathers. With the many dwarves that had perished, so too had many of the Jotuns and demons of Khorne. Yet still they advanced after the last of the Nordic dwarves, with even further reinforcement after the bloody display of dominance. Other Jarls joined the Blood Queen Valkyr and the blooded champion Hargroth, fearful of what their defiance of this great force of chaos would bring in terms of consequences. The dwarves fled northwest, through underground tunnels and caves to Kraka Dordan. Kraka Dordan held the tides back much more efficiently than Kraka Drak, partly due to its superior defensive position, but also due to the legendary Drake cannons of the fort's mountainside, waiting to unleash a fiery storm of mighty dwarven engineering upon any demon who ventured too deep into the mountain. Once the hordes of chaos had arrived at the battlements of Kraka Dordan, the dwarves opened a line of dragonfire upon the legions and annihilated all but their lieutenant, Kjol Thunderhand. Surviving the initial blaze, Thunderhand charged forth and met the axes of dwarven footmen alone. Despite his ferocious attack upon the dwarven front line, he fell beneath the throng of angry axes. Despite this initial victory, Kraka Dordan, much like Kraka Drak, would fall when a flanking force of Valkyr's armies finally crossed the mountains and assaulted the city gates. This catastrophic series of events would continue to sweep the minor forts of the dwarves until they retreated all the way to the port of Sjoktraken. Some dwarven forts, such as Kraka Onsmeteg, were even destroyed from the inside. Speculation has offered explanations such as sabotage or desperation on the part of the dwarves, but none survived to offer an accurate tale of what actually transpired. Once at the port of Sjoktraken, with the hope of uniting their southern cousins, the dwarves met with a surprise ambush by Chaos champion Gutrot Spoom's Plague Fleet. The Lord of Tentacles delighted in proving himself in the shadow of his former failures, and placed the final nail in the coffin of the Nordic dwarves. The dwarven fleet sank into the frigid depths of the frozen sea. Satisfied with the great toll of skulls and beards collected for Khorne, Valkyr turned her forces towards the Dark Elven realms. Meanwhile, Archaon's vanguard would mobilize and soon set forth a march towards Kislev. Our series on the end times of the Warhammer Fantasy universe will continue in the near future, so make sure you have subscribed and press the bell button. Please consider liking and sharing. This goes a long way to help us in the eyes of the almighty algorithm. We'll try to read and respond to every comment, as we want to see what you think about this video and which videos you hope to see in the future. Your feedback is very important to us. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.